"Sir, step off the motorcycle now." The command rang sharp across the empty lot, carried by the wind that rustled through the Texas prairie. Officer Kendra Mills, 27, stood stiff-backed, her hand resting on the grip of her firearm. She was new to this town, new to the job, but not new to danger. Still, she hadn't expected this. An old black man in a worn leather jacket, perched like a statue on a vintage Harley, staring into the horizon like he hadn't heard a word she'd said. Her partner, Officer Todd Langley, white, mid-40s, beer-bellied and bitter, chuckled under his breath. "Probably deaf," he muttered. "Or senile." James Elijah Harris blinked slowly, then turned his head, fixing them both with eyes that didn't tremble. Eyes that had once seen the fall of Saigon, the burning of Beirut, the betrayal of brothers in arms. "You pulled me over for what?" he asked, voice calm, deep, unwavering. "You don't have a license plate," Mills said. "No visible registration. You're on a custom-built Harley from the 60s in the middle of nowhere, and you ran a red light back in town." "That light's been broken since '08, James replied, his voice flat. Todd smirked. "And how would you know that?" James didn't answer. Instead, he reached slowly into his vest pocket. Both officers tensed. Hands moved to weapons. "Easy," Mills barked, but James only pulled out a faded leather wallet. He flipped it open, revealing an ID card so old it had yellowed. The name at the top read, Colonel James E. Harris, United States Special Forces, retired. There was a medal tucked behind the ID, a Medal of Honor. Langley scoffed. That could be fake. Mills looked uneasy. Something in her gut whispered that this man wasn't someone to be toyed with. But her training and her partner's growing tension pushed her forward. "We're going to have to run this," she said. "Step off the bike." James didn't move. Instead, he said something unexpected. "You ever hear of Operation Phoenix Tide?" Langley rolled his eyes. "What is this, some Vietnam bedtime story?" But Mills froze. That name, she heard it once. Her father, a military historian, used to talk about it late at night when he thought no one was listening. A covert mission so dangerous and classified that every record of it had supposedly been burned. "You were there?" she asked, voice softer now. James nodded. I buried 12 of my brothers in a jungle the world never admitted we entered. I led that unit, and I've spent 40 years being forgotten by the country I bled for." He looked directly at Mills. "Until yesterday, when the government called me back." Langley laughed. "Oh, come on. That's rich. You expect us to believe the Army's hiring geriatrics now?" James didn't answer. He just glanced at his watch. "They'll be here in less than 2 minutes. "Who?" Mills asked, but before he could respond, the sound came, a low, growing rumble like thunder rolling across the earth. Over the ridge, 3 matte black Humvees appeared, military insignias gleaming under the sunlight. Soldiers in full tactical gear emerged with precision, forming a perimeter around the gas station in seconds. One of them, a tall black woman with silver streaks in her hair and 4 stars on her shoulder, approached. "Colonel Harris," she said, saluting. "We're ready." Langley's jaw dropped. What the hell is going on here? James finally stood, slowly climbing off the Harley with the grace of someone half his age. "Classified op," he said. "But if I were you, I'd go home and ask why your department flagged me." He turned to Mills. "You felt it, didn't you? That something about this stop wasn't right." Mills nodded, uncertain. James walked toward the Humvees, but then he paused and turned back. "Langley," he said, his voice harder now, "ask your father about me. His name's William Langley, right?" Langley's face went pale. "How do you?" James didn't answer. He climbed into the vehicle and was gone. Mills turned to her partner, who looked like he'd seen a ghost. "What was that about?" she asked. Langley was silent, because what he remembered, what he had tried to forget, was a name whispered through the halls of his childhood home like a curse. His father used to speak of a black devil in uniform who ruined his career, who testified against him in a court-martial during the Cold War. That man's name was James Harris. And if he was back, if the government had called him, then something bigger than both of them was about to unfold, and Mills had just stepped into the middle of it. Langley's mouth went dry. "You're James Harris?" he muttered, stumbling back a step. The man's gaze was cold steel. "Took you long enough." The armored trucks roared past, dust swirling in their wake. The road behind them was already crawling with federal agents in unmarked suits. Langley turned to see one of them flashing a badge that read, Department of Homeland Strategic Security. Captain Bryce was the only one who didn't look shocked. He stepped forward. Langley, I try to warn you. James Harris isn't just a retired cop. He was part of Phantom Echo, a military deep-cover unit disbanded after a classified mission went wrong. A unit they tried to erase from history. Langley blinked, struggling to process the information. I thought he was just some bitter ex-cop, selling fruit on the street. James let out a bitter laugh. That's exactly what they wanted. Hide me in plain sight. Let me rot while the truth got buried. An agent in black approached. Mr. Harris, we've confirmed it. Langley's father, William Langley, was the leak on Operation Serpent. He sold identities of your unit to a private contractor overseas. You were marked for elimination because of him. Langley stiffened. That's a lot, but James' face didn't flinch. No, that's why your father pushed for my dismissal. He knew I was getting too close. And now you're here, trying to finish what he started. No, Langley shouted. I didn't know any of this. You racially profiled me. You stripped my dignity in front of kids and neighbors. Just like your father did 30 years ago. Same uniform, same hatred, James said, stepping forward. But this time, I'm not going to be quiet. The silence cracked like thunder. Then a voice came from behind. A familiar one. Rachel Whitman, the attorney, emerged from one of the black SUVs. I reopened the file last year, she said to Bryce. New evidence, sealed court transcripts, surveillance logs. It all points to a cover-up orchestrated by William Langley. James was thrown under the bus to protect the department's reputation. Langley looked around, sweat forming on his temple. So what? You're arresting me for something I didn't do. Rachel's eyes narrowed. No, but you need to understand what your badge means when you wear it over hate instead of justice. One of the federal agents stepped forward, handing James a sealed file. He opened it, hands trembling slightly. Inside were two things, a clearance badge and a photograph of his old squad. Names now cleared. They want you back, the agent said quietly. There's an intelligence leak in Ridgeway. You're the only one with the history and eyes to find it. James stared at the badge. After all these years, after all the silence, the lies, the humiliation, I'm tired, he murmured. Tired of carrying a country on my back that barely notices when I bleed. Bryce stepped closer. That's why you have to go back, Harris. Not for them. For all the others who were buried in reports and never got justice. You stand for more than just a name on paper. James glanced at Langley. Tell me something. If I walked down Main Street tomorrow in uniform, would you salute me or stop me? Langley swallowed hard, ashamed. I don't know. James gave a slow nod. At least you're honest. He turned toward Rachel. You coming with me? Always, she said, her voice firm. We've got truth to finish writing. The federal team began loading up the vehicles. Bryce clapped James on the back. Welcome back, Lieutenant. Langley stood alone in the dust, watching a man he had humiliated rise like a storm he couldn't control. A man who had once fought in silence was now returning with thunder as the convoy disappeared. Langley reached for his radio. His hands were shaking. Back at the station, he sat in his cruiser long after the others had gone. On his dashboard sat an old photo he'd never really looked at before. His father, young and proud in uniform. But next to him was James Harris, a partner once before betrayal. His radio crackled. Unit 9, respond. Langley didn't answer. He thought about every traffic stop he'd made, every young black man he'd pulled over for routine checks. The look in their eyes, the quiet fear. He had been part of something ugly without even realizing it. Or maybe he had. Maybe he just never cared. Until now.